Hey guys, and welcome to video number 2 for chapter 18. I apologize up front about the frogginess in my voice. I've been fighting a bit of a cold and cough that I came down with over the last few days. One of the reasons why it's taken me a little bit longer than expected to get these videos up. I was kind of waiting for my voice to get back to a little bit of full strength. But in any event, also a quick note about this video. I'm going out of order chronologically with these. In the chapter, it starts off with the early Turkish empires that we talked about in the first video. Then it goes into the bulk of the chapter, discusses the Mongols with Genghis Khan and then Kublai Khan. And then it finishes up at the end with a quick section about later Turkish empires. I decided to kind of chunk this up thematically and follow up the first video on the early Turkish empires with this one about later Turkish empires. So I'll be making some references to the Mongols, even though I haven't discussed them yet in the videos, but it's not going to be that big of a deal. And then we'll go over the Mongols in videos 3 and 4. So first thing first, we'll start off with this guy, Tamerlane. Now, when the Mongols came through and conquered and toppled the Abbasid dynasty, which we'll talk about in a later video, they created a huge power vacuum, and it was filled by other nomadic peoples. And the most prominent of these leaders to come through after the Mongols was this man, Timur Ilang, Timur the Lame. He walked with a limp, for most of his adult life from an injury he suffered as a child. And that basically kind of, westernized gets translated into Tamerlane. He was born in 1336 in what today would be Uzbekistan, and he took Genghis Khan as a role model. And like his role model, he was a courageous and charismatic leader. Now, he was a very successful conqueror as well. By 1370, he had conquered large areas of Central Asia. You see Samarkand, where he was born and where he would later make his capital. That today is in Uzbekistan. And then areas directly under his control around 1400, you've got the Fertile Crescent through here, and what would be Iraq. You've got Iran, you've got Afghanistan, even kind of bordering up into the Indus River Valley. That's great. We don't care about that. So, sorry about that. And then you see the lighter green areas, the areas that they were subject to his periodic raids. And for some of these, they would go all the way up into Russia, Anatolia, what today is Turkey, and even into India. He sacked the city of Delhi and really did a number on that. He had planned on invading China as well, but he died in 1405 while they were still planning the invasion. Now, much like the Mongols, and the ones that inspired him, he was a conqueror, not a governor. That's a big theme that we have for these nomadic peoples. They were very good at warfare, but they weren't that effective when it came to really establishing bureaucracies and, kind of lasting governments. He ruled through tribal alliances rather than any established bureaucracy, and a lot of it was just a glorified tribute system. So he was feared, people didn't mess with him, but it wasn't like he created this kind of expansive centralized government. And what tends to happen in systems like this is that they don't last very long after the ruler who sets it up dies. And that's what happens here. Very much like Charlemagne, his empire didn't survive long after his death. His sons and grandsons, they were just not up to the task. And the last vestiges of his empire fell by the early 1500s. Now, the Ottoman Empire would be much more longer lasting. The Ottoman Empire is a Turkish empire. In fact, that's where the country Turkey today really gets its name from. Not Ottoman, obviously, but just from the Turks who settled there. And it was begun by this individual, Osman. Large numbers of Turks really started to migrate into Anatolia, which is today present-day Turkey, from Persia after the Mongols conquered that area. Now, Anatolia was under Seljuk Turk control. Remember, we talked about that in the previous video. Well, in 1299, Osman declared his independence from the Seljuk Sultan. He had gained enough followers and they had gained enough power that they were able to do so. And his followers became known as Osmanlis, or Ottomans, as it became kind of westernized. Much like, kind of those other nomadic people, they were effective conquerors. They started out in a very, very small area. You see this area, this outline in black, which is kind of, considered their homeland, and the western areas of Anatolia. But then by the late 1300s, they had really started to go out and conquer areas of the Balkan Peninsula. The Balkan Peninsula, we think of like Greece and, say like with Croatia and Serbia and so forth. Their expansion was halted in the 1400s by Tamerlane and his expanses, but by the mid 1400s, Tamerlane had died, and so the empire was on the decline. So they were able to go back into their expansion, and it really left the Byzantines with only this small little area around Constantinople. But they would not be able to hold on to that for very long because of the fall of the Byzantine Empire. Hold on, let me just get rid of this stuff here. The date to remember for that, 1453. Okay, that is the date that the Sultan Mehmed II, he captured the city of Constantinople and renamed it as Istanbul. And that is the name of the city today as the capital of Turkey. And the Ottomans would remain the dominant political force in the Middle East well into the 20th century. The Ottoman Empire existed until World War I when it finally collapsed. All right, so that was just on the later Turkish empires. And then for the next two videos, we will get into the Mongols.